The South American nation of Ecuador was once perceived as a haven of peace, sandwiched between the cocaine-producing Colombia and Peru. Now, renowned as the world's top exporter of bananas, it is in fact home to the biodiverse Galapagos Islands. However, in the past 5 years, things have in fact taken a turn for the worse. Large ports, lax security and endemic corruption have lured foreign drug cartels to its shores. These drug cartels have increasingly felt the heat of war on drugs in countries like Mexico and Colombia, thereby turning their attention to Ecuador. Now, over the past week, Ecuador has witnessed a wave of violence by these drug gangs, which has prompted the newly elected president, Daniel Noboa, to declare a 60-day state of emergency. Now, responding to the government crackdown, the gangs have retaliated with their own declaration of war, threatening to execute civilians and even the security forces. So far, at least about 10 people have been killed in the violence. Vowing not to yield to the narco-gangs, Noboa has reaffirmed that Ecuador is now in a state of war against these drug cartels.
Ecuador has been plunged into crisis after years of unchecked mushrooming influence of transnational narco-gangs, who use its ports to ship cocaine to the United States and Europe. The latest outburst of violence was triggered by the 7th January prison escape. One of the country's most powerful narco bosses, José Adolfo Macias, better known by the alias Fito. Fito, described as Ecuador's most wanted prisoner, escaped from the La Regional jail in Guayaquil, barely hours before he was set to be transferred to a maximum security prison. He was sentenced to 34 years in 2011 for several crimes, including murder and drug trafficking. His gang, Los Choneros, wields considerable clout in Ecuador's prisons. The next day, a string of riots were reported from at least 6 prisons. More than 100 prison guards and administrative staff were taken hostage by inmates who threatened to kill them in case of any action. At least 39 reportedly broke out of a prison in the city of Riobamba, including Fabricio Colón Pico, or El Salvage, leader of the Los Lobos group. In addition to the prison riots, bombs exploded at several locations across the country. The same day, in his first decree since coming to power in November, 36-year-old President Daniel Noboa declared a state of emergency and nighttime curfew for the next 60 days. He also classified 22 gangs as terrorist organizations in his decree.
I've given clear indications to the police and military commanders to intervene in the control of the prisons. I've just signed a decree of state of emergency so the armed forces can have all the political and legal support in their actions. I make a call to all citizens because this fight corresponds to everyone, so they should also give their support to the armed forces.
In a brazen attack the next day in the port city of Guayaquil at around 2 p.m. local time, attackers wearing balaclavas stormed a state-owned TV station. In dramatic scenes broadcast live before police arrived, guns were pointed at TV staff, asking them to lie on the floor. Several journalists and staff members were taken hostage, albeit briefly. 13 suspected gunmen were arrested and all hostages freed in the rescue operation. This attack, in which some of the attackers were as young as 16, panicked the general population, prompting them to leave work and close shops. Fearful citizens found themselves staring at an uncertain future.
We still have to go out every day because nobody will solve the money issue for us. But we are very afraid, with a lot of uncertainty, both financial and personal. You don't know what is going to happen today, what is going to happen in the next few days, if there will be a solution soon. That's the uncertainty that we live with day by day.
The same day, neighboring Peru declared a state of emergency along its northern border with Ecuador, sending an additional 500 soldiers to secure the frontier. The severity of the situation in Ecuador can be gauged by some of the statistics. The country's murder rate has quadrupled from 2018 to 2022, with the last year being the worst yet, with 7,800 murders in a population of about 17 million. In addition to this, a record 220 tons of drugs were seized as well. The burgeoning crisis is the toughest challenge for Daniel Noboa, barely 2 months into his term, who had pledged to curb violence of narco-gangs in his election campaign. Will Noboa succeed in his fight against narco-gangs? A 17 million strong nation, anxious and panic-stricken, awaits.